Unit 6. Trends. Recording 1. 1,
She'll have been running.
2,
I'll be seeing him later.
3,
I'll be there.
4,
We're to be there at 1.
Unit 6. Recording 2.
Professor David Crystal says that the migratory patterns of our language as it continues to move across the globe gives us a whole range of Englishes, and that process is becoming ever more intense.
So just as once upon a time there was British English and American English, and then there came Australian English and South African English, and then Indian English, and then Caribbean English, now it's down to the level of Nigerian English, Ghanaian English, Singaporean English, and so on. And these are the new Englishes of the world. But what happens is this, that when a country adopts English as its language, it then immediately adapts it to suit its own circumstances. I mean, why have a language? You have to express what you want to say, which is your culture, your people, your identity. And when you think of everything that makes up an identity, all the plants and animals that you have, the food and drink, the myths, the legends, the history of your culture, the politics of it, the folk tales, the music, everything has to be talked about in language. And that means your local language, local words to do with the way you are and different from the way everybody else is. And so the result has been, as English has been taken up by over 70 countries in the world as an important medium of their local communication, but they've developed their own local brand of English.
How many people spoke the language we are now conversing in, say, 600 years ago?
Certainly we know around about 1500, 1600, there were 4 million speakers of English in England.
And now in the early part of the 21st century, how many?
Well, if you distinguish between sort of first language speakers and foreign language speakers, there's about 400 million or so first language speakers. English is a mother tongue or father tongue, depending on your point of view, around the world. And about 5 times as many who speak English as a second or a foreign language. So we're talking about 2 billion people, a third of the world's population, really. The important point to notice is that for every 1 native speaker of English, there are now 4 or 5 non-native speakers of English. So the centre of gravity of the language has shifted with interesting consequences.
Unit 6. Recording 3. 1.
While English is still the dominant language on the internet, other languages will become increasingly important.
2.
Although 27.3% of internet users are English speakers, this number is closely followed by Chinese speakers. Though we may find it hard to believe, the global language of the future might be Chinese or Arabic.
3.
Difficult though it may be for students, in the future, many school and university subjects are likely to be taught in English using English materials.
4.
Whichever way you look at it, children need to start learning English when they are as young as possible.
5.
In spite of increasing numbers of English speakers, the global predominance of English is likely to change.
6.
Despite being able to use simultaneous translation on their phones to speak to each other, people will still want to learn another language.
7.
Whilst people continue to use English to communicate on the internet, the language itself will continue to change.
Unit 6. Recording 4. Speaker 1.
It's a trend that started in the States and spread certainly in Europe. And it's when guys wear their jeans halfway down their hips, so you can see their underwear. Apparently, it all started in the prison system in the States. What happened was that prisoners aren't allowed to wear belts because these can be used as a weapon. And the prison uniforms were often too big for the inmates. So you'd have a little guy wearing a huge baggy pair of prison-issue trousers, and so the prisoners ended up with these trousers halfway down their legs. So the trend has its roots in the prison system, but somehow it spread beyond those walls. So rappers like Ice-T started wearing their trousers like this, and it led to widespread adoption of the style. It's known in some parts as a kind of gangster look because obviously it originated in prison, but actually it's pretty common now amongst young people. So basically it's crossed over into the mainstream. And I guess this is how fashions start and spread, because they kind of come from nowhere, out of the blue. And then early adopters, I think they're called, help to make them fashionable. And suddenly you've got a trend.
Speaker 2.
As a TV producer, I've obviously looked at the trend of reality TV. It all started to take off in the 90s with the emergence of programmes like Big Brother and Pop Idol. But actually, I'd say it originated from earlier programmes, stuff that was done in the 70s and 80s. I think the popularity of these shows has caused a big shift in how programmes are made. Production values are quite low, and the emphasis is now on making something cheap and quick. Because of this, TV companies make bigger profits, and it's this that resulted in these shows spreading around the world. So what I'm really saying is we'll keep making these programmes now until the public tires of them. And it's because of the public's taste for knowing about real people and real lives.
Unit 6. Recording 5. 1.
People now expect to download music for free, and CD sales are at their lowest ebb. Basically, the music industry has had to completely change its business model.
2.
We saw some great presentations at the conference. The hotel was wonderful and we loved the food, so overall it was really worth it.
3.
Bloggers take news from reporters and write comments. They don't do much reporting. So what I'm really saying is that without real reporters, there's no news.
4.
Sales of the game soared in May, jumped again in July and rose dramatically in December. To sum up, we've had an incredible year.
5.
The report says young people believe in openness. They like sharing their private lives online. In conclusion, young people don't value their privacy as much as older generations.
6.
We had developed a great product, so logically it should have been a success. However, we had technical problems. Then a competitor stole the idea. All in all, it was a complete disaster.
Unit 6. Recording 6. 1.
Basically, the music industry has had to completely change its business model.
2.
Sales of the game soared in May, jumped again in July and rose dramatically in December.
3.
We had developed a great product, so logically it should have been a success.
Unit 6. Recording 7.
So the gadget is called Midomo, and it's a type of water carrier on wheels, but it also works as a filter. According to the description here, it was invented because in some parts of Africa, people need to walk several miles to fetch water. And also, of course, contaminated water accounts for so many illnesses and deaths in sub-Saharan Africa.
So it's like a container for water, but it also cleans the water?
Yeah, it's a bit like a wheelbarrow. You collect the water in this container, and then while you're walking, as the wheels turn, the filter system starts working to clean the water.
So it solves two problems at once. It could save millions of lives because it filters dirty water, and it also makes it easier to transport the water.
It's an amazing invention, and I think one of the biggest benefits is that it's relatively cheap.
Oh, OK. What kind of prices are we talking about?
It'll go on the market for around about £100. I guess the question is whether to fund it or not. Can we see any drawbacks?
I can't really see any negatives. You'd have to ask how durable it is. Is it likely to break? What materials is it made from? How easy is it to manufacture and export? But overall, it seems like a great investment.
Yeah, not just for financial reasons, but also it's going to save lives.
And is it a big company that's making it available?
No, it's a startup called Red Button Design. They're based in the UK.
OK. My initial reaction is that it's worth investing in this, but obviously we'd need more details about the product.
I agree. I think it has a lot of potential.
Unit 7. Freedom. Recording 1. To form verbs.
Motivate. Hesitate. Renovate. Elaborate. Darken. Strengthen. Brighten. Prioritize. Legalize. Modernize. Realize. Glorify. Electrify. Exemplify.
To form nouns.
Exhaustion. Production. Recollection. Immediacy. Accuracy. Tendency. Clarity. Stupidity. Opportunity. Embarrassment. Enjoyment. Harassment. Loneliness. Unhappiness. Tiredness. Engineer. Musician. Professor. Applicant. Attendant. Disinfectant. Clearance. Reappearance. Pretense.
To form adjectives.
Dominant. Redundant. Independent. Scandalous. Rebellious. Suspicious. Capable. Edible. Visible. Persuasive. Elusive. Evasive. Massive. Respectful. Helpful. Resourceful.
To form adverbs.
Deeply. Financially. Dramatically. Extensively. Supposedly.
Unit 7. Recording 2. 1.
OK, run around the field one more time, then you can have a breather.
2.
Just go to the party and let your hair down.
3.
She's going to take time out from work to finish her PhD dissertation.
4.
I went travelling in order to take my mind off the tragedy.
5.
It's hard to switch off at weekends.
6.
If I've been working a 16-hour shift, I usually go to the bar to unwind.
Unit 7. Recording 3. Speaker 1.
The way I switch off is by going hiking. We have excellent trails near where I live, in Canada, where you can walk for a couple of hours. Some days, when I'm out there, I literally don't see another person. For me, it's a good way to take time out from my routine. The actual hiking's a hard slog because we're at high altitude and going up hills and across some rocky terrain, but that's fine because it means you're so focused on the walk you can't think about anything else. The only hairy moment was about a year ago when I saw a mountain lion on the trail about 20 yards away. It stopped, looked up at me, had a little sniff, and decided it didn't want me for dinner.
Speaker 2.
If I want to unwind, I play the piano. I don't think anyone would confuse me with Beethoven. I'm really not very good. But I just find it relaxing. It's like doodling or something. You just let your fingers wander and go with the flow. I play all kinds of music, even some of my own compositions, which, as I say, are nothing special. My friends say my stuff sounds like elevator music, the kind of thing you hear in the elevator of a sleepy hotel. I think they're probably right.
Speaker 3.
Any team sports do it for me. I can be having the most stressful day, but then I meet up with my friends for a game of football or ultimate frisbee, and all my problems melt away, at least temporarily. I think it's that idea of just running around in the open air, getting sweaty. Maybe it's a remnant of childhood or something, when you had nothing to worry about, so you just ran around all day. It works for me.
Unit 7. Recording 4. Did you read that article recently about, I can't remember her name, a New York journalist who...
Oh, the one about the 9-year-old child?
Yeah, who left her son in central New York and left him to come back on his own, to make his own way back at the age of 9.
Brilliant.
Brilliant?
Yes.
Oh, come on, you must be joking.
I'm absolutely serious.
Well, in what way brilliant? I mean, he could have got lost, he could have been attacked, he could have been mugged, he could
That's absolutely right. And we have...
What, and that's good?
Look, we have to, as parents now, take a stand against all this mollycoddling, cotton wool rubbish. I was allowed to do a lot at a very young age, and it helped me make the right decisions about how to protect myself and learn to be streetwise. These kids don't know anything these days.
Well, I agree with you up to a point, but, I mean, you can't think that a 9-year-old should be left alone to kind of grow up in the course of 2 hours.
Surely you don't think that he should never make his own way home then? And never learn?
Of course not, but not at the age of 9.
Right. Well, that goes against my better judgment, because I actually think it's more responsible as a parent to show them by chucking them in at the deep end.
Right, so you think it's more responsible to abandon your child? You can't think that, surely.
She didn't abandon the child.
Well, effectively she did.
He lives in New York. And anyway...
What, well, that's one of the most dangerous places in the world.
How can you say that? There are far worse places in the world. It's all relative.
Of course it's all relative, but if you look at the muggings and the crime rate in New York, it's horrendous. And a 9-year-old wouldn't have a clue how to deal with all of that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It wasn't, from what I know, at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, you have to take it with a pinch of salt a bit.
Right.
Right.
Because all crime happens at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Surely you don't think then that it's terribly dangerous to leave a child in a city in the middle of the morning that they know, and they're not 4.
At the age of 9. He didn't even have a mobile phone.
He's probably a 9-year-old that's really got a lot going on. That's the whole point, I think, to take the child as an individual.
I understand wanting the empowerment. I just think we're in a hurry to push our kids to grow up too soon these days. I don't understand it.
Oh,
What's
please.
the hurry?
Everybody feels like, if everybody feels like that, we're never going to get anybody that stands up for themselves.
Oh, that's ridiculous. We're talking about a 9-year-old.
That's absolutely right.
Unit 7. Recording 5. 1.
The point is that he was only 9 years old.
2.
Surely you don't think he should never be allowed out?
3.
That's the whole point. We need to encourage independence.
4.
All I'm trying to say is New York is a dangerous city.
5.
I just think we're too risk-averse.
6.
Oh, come on. You can't really think that.
Unit 7. Recording 6.
I think there are two ways to look at it. Freedom to me means letting your hair down and being able to relax completely.
Right, I know what you mean.
But we should also bear in mind political freedoms.
Well, exactly, that's what I was going to say. When I think of freedom, I immediately think of its opposite, of persecution and all the oppression going on around the world.
So the lack of freedom.
Not only lack of freedom, but actual oppression. People being denied human rights, such as the right to vote.
To be part of a functioning democracy.
Also freedom to worship, freedom of religion.
And maybe you could add to that the freedom to access information without it being blocked or censored. This seems to have been in the news a lot lately.
That's right. The issue of governments trying to control what the population can and can't see or hear or read. I think people would be horrified if they knew just how widespread censorship is and how much their freedoms are being eroded. And I'm not only talking about developing countries, it's in many developed countries too.
While we're on the subject of censorship, do you think freedom of speech is still a big problem?
Yes, in general, I'd say that one of the biggest issues is the freedom to express yourself. So it's freedom of speech and freedom to wear what you like. As I see it, those are all essential freedoms.
And perhaps the biggest issue of all in recent years, bearing in mind the various refugee crises, is freedom to travel, open borders.
Yes, definitely. There must be, hundreds of thousands of people trying to escape their countries because of poverty or persecution, to make better lives for their families, and these people are labelled illegal because perhaps they don't have the right documents. But the question is, who has the right to stop other people from seeking a better life elsewhere? If your country has been half destroyed by war or sanctions, who wouldn't want to leave to give their kids a better future? For me, the freedom to travel is a basic human right. Unit 8. Time. Recording 1. 1.
A picture is worth 1,000 words.
2.
Better safe than sorry.
3.
Out of sight, out of mind.
4.
Home is where the heart is.
5.
Practice what you preach.
6.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
7.
There's no place like home.
8.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
9.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
10.
Actions speak louder than words.
11.
Practice makes perfect.
12.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Unit 8. Recording 2.
Hello, we're looking back quite a bit in this week's programme, back to childhood for a start. Now, ever had that feeling of being suddenly carried back in time by a particular odour? You probably have, because it's a common experience. The smell of coal does it for me, and even more specifically, mint sauce. One whiff of that and it's back to Sunday lunch in the house where I was born. There is, it seems, something special about smells when it comes to evoking memories. Now, as Claudia Hammond reports, psychologists think they may be getting to the root of it.
The smell that always really takes me back in time is the smell of disinfectant and kind of cedary wood. And for some bizarre reason, it reminds me of being at school when I was about 7.
Whenever I smell privet, walk past a hedge or something, it takes me instantly back to my kindergarten, to the rather smelly passage through from the garden to the school restaurant where we had our lunches. It takes me straight back there.
For some reason, the memories evoked by smells seem to be stronger than memories that come back to you, say, from looking at a photo. In the field of psychology, they call it the Proust phenomenon, after the famous incident with the Madeleines in remembrance of things past. One of the people studying the Proust effect is Dr. Simon Shue, a lecturer in psychology at Liverpool University. The link between smell and memory has hardly been touched by researchers, because until recently it's been very difficult to prove in the lab. Using familiar smells like vinegar and talcum powder, Simon Shue tries to trigger autobiographical memories. So what have you got here? You've got about 8 little plastic boxes.
So here we've got things like normal mixed herbs, we've got some cigarette ash, some vinegar, ketchup, got some paint. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a word, and I'm going to ask you to tell me as much as you can about a particular experience that the word reminds you of.
First, he gives his volunteer Louise a word, like cigarette, and she has to come up with an event from her past linked to the word. Once she's remembered everything she can, he lets her sniff the real thing from one of his special boxes.
I'd like you to sniff gently at this and tell me anything else you can remember about that particular experience.
Oh, stale cigarette smoke. That's a horrible smell. I can still smell it from here. I just remember just the smell of it, and the fact that you can still smell it on yourself ages later, and then when you go home you suddenly realise that your parents are probably going to be able to smell it on you as well, and you get that fear inside you that they're going to know that you were smoking, and you're there with the polos and the perfume and that kind of thing, desperately trying to cover up the smell so that your parents don't know what you've been up to.
Confronted by the actual smell of cigarettes, Louise remembers far more about the event than she did when she was simply given the word cigarette. In particular, she remembered the fear that her parents would find out she'd been having a sneaky cigarette. It seems that smell is very good at bringing back the emotional details like this.
There is something quite unusual and special about the relationship between smells and memory.
For me, the most evocative smell is that smell you get when candles have just been snuffed out, and it takes me back to my childhood when I was a chorister in a church choir in a village in Berkshire. And towards the end of the service, one of the servers used to come out and extinguish the big candles up by the altar. And if I just smell that smell of candles being snuffed out, I'm instantly back at that time, and the memories of the music of my boyhood, the church music of the time.
Odours that prompt the memories of times past.
Unit 8. Recording 3. Part 1.
Hello, we're looking back quite a bit in this week's programme, back to childhood for a start. Now, ever had that feeling of being suddenly carried back in time by a particular odour? You probably have, because it's a common experience. The smell of coal does it for me, and even more specifically, mint sauce. One whiff of that and it's back to Sunday lunch in the house where I was born. There is, it seems, something special about smells when it comes to evoking memories. Now, as Claudia Hammond reports, psychologists think they may be getting to the root of it.
The smell that always really takes me back in time is the smell of disinfectant and kind of cedary wood. And for some bizarre reason, it reminds me of being at school when I was about 7.
Whenever I smell privet, walk past a hedge or something, it takes me instantly back to my kindergarten, to the rather smelly passage through from the garden to the school restaurant where we had our lunches. It takes me straight back there.
Part 2.
For some reason, the memories evoked by smells seem to be stronger than memories that come back to you, say, from looking at a photo. In the field of psychology, they call it the Proust phenomenon, after the famous incident with the Madeleines in remembrance of things past. One of the people studying the Proust effect is Dr. Simon Shue, a lecturer in psychology at Liverpool University. The link between smell and memory has hardly been touched by researchers, because until recently it's been very difficult to prove in the lab. Using familiar smells like vinegar and talcum powder, Simon Shue tries to trigger autobiographical memories. So what have you got here? You've got about 8 little plastic boxes.
So here we've got things like normal mixed herbs, we've got some cigarette ash, some vinegar, ketchup, got some paint. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a word, and I'm going to ask you to tell me as much as you can about a particular experience that the word reminds you of.
First, he gives his volunteer Louise a word, like cigarette, and she has to come up with an event from her past linked to the word. Once she's remembered everything she can, he lets her sniff the real thing from one of his special boxes.
I'd like you to sniff gently at this and tell me anything else you can remember about that particular experience.
Oh, stale stale cigarette smoke. That's a horrible smell. I can still smell it from here. I just remember just the smell of it, and the fact that you can still smell it on yourself ages later, and then when you go home, you suddenly realise that your parents are probably going to be able to smell it on you as well, and then you get that fear inside you that they're going to know that you were smoking, and you're there with the polos and the perfume and that kind of thing, desperately trying to cover up the smell so that your parents don't know what you've been up to.
Confronted by the actual smell of cigarettes, Louise remembers far more about the event than she did when she was simply given the word cigarette. In particular, she remembered the fear that her parents would find out she'd been having a sneaky cigarette. It seems that smell is very good at bringing back the emotional details like this.
Part 3.
There is something quite unusual and special about the relationship between smells and memory.
For me, the most evocative smell is that smell you get when candles have just been snuffed out, and it takes me back to my childhood when I was a chorister in a church choir in a village in Berkshire. And towards the end of the service, one of the servers used to come out and extinguish the big candles up by the altar. And if I just smell that smell of candles being snuffed out, I'm instantly back at that time. And the memories of the music of my boyhood, the church music of the time.
Odours that prompt the memories of times past.
Unit 8. Recording 4. Conversation 1.
You coming to the party?
Yes, I think so.
Conversation 2.
Did you just delete the file?
Hope not.
Conversation 3.
Want to try this perfume?
No, but I'll try that one.
Conversation 4.
You think we'll have enough time to discuss this later?
We'll have a little.
Conversation 5.
You going away on holiday this year?
No, Anne-Marie doesn't have enough money, and nor do I.
Conversation 6.
You sure you've got enough copies for everyone?
Yes, lots.
Unit 8. Recording 5.
John, you're a time management consultant. What exactly do you do?
Hello, Stephanie. I advise individuals and companies on how to maximise their time. It involves looking at the processes they use to accomplish tasks, looking at how deadlines are set and met, and examining people's working habits to see if there are any shortcuts or more efficient ways to do things.
Right, OK. So what type of companies do you work with?
All kinds, really. Everything from very traditional manufacturing firms to internet startups. Every company wastes time at some point, and every company wants to save time. Having said that, I'd say some companies are more efficient than others.
Can you go into more detail? So let's say I want to restructure my day to get more work done. How would you approach it?
Well, the first thing I do is observe your routine. What's your normal day like?
Sure.
As a journalist, you probably have deadlines.
Definitely.
You're probably under pressure, but looking at it another way, you may have a lot of freedom about where and how you work and what time of day. You don't have the constraints of, say, the traditional office worker.
I never thought of that, but yes, it's true.
So, you need to work quickly, but on the other hand, you probably have great resources, people who can help you, contacts, archives, and these are the tools you use to accomplish the task.
Right.
OK, so then we look at your typical day, starting from the moment you sit down at your desk. What's the first thing you do? Probably, if you're like everybody else, you check your emails. Maybe you read the news, go on a couple of social media sites and respond to a few messages. But I'm looking at how long this takes you and how much time is spent off task. I'm also looking at what you're looking at. Do you have a calendar? Do you use to-do lists, prioritise tasks that you need to finish at certain times of the day? Some people have lists next to their lists. They write down the names of contacts and other information which they'll use in order to achieve the task.
That's a good idea. Can you think of anything else you might look at?
How much media is around you? By which I really mean, how many distractions are there? If you have text messaging, Facebook, the TV, the phone, the mobile phone, all within reach, then what are your chances of working uninterrupted for more than 10 minutes?
I know what you mean. Alternatively, those might be the sources of my information.
Yes and no. You need them, but at some point you have to work without them if you're going to write something original.
Right. So you obviously go into a lot of detail looking at what people do every day. Any other suggestions for how I might save time?
Loads. One other thing you can do is...
Unit 8. Recording 6. 1.
What else?
2.
Can you tell us more?
3.
Anything to add?
4.
Is there anything we've missed?
5.
Anyone managed to come up with other ideas?
Unit 8. Recording 7.
When I was about 9 or 10 and everybody from primary school was moving up to secondary school, my parents gave me the option to go to a specialised theatrical school or regular comprehensive. And it was very important because I remember being sat down and shown brochures of everything, and there was no pressure either way. And at that young age, I made the decision to go to a theatre school. And luckily for me, it's panned out, and I've had a career in that line of work. But I then found myself faced with another decision because we were moving house and we had to leave school. And did we want to continue with theatre school or did we want to go to a normal school? And at that point, I was about 14, and I decided actually I want to get an education and leave the theatrical world at that point. Still very, very young to make those decisions. And I did. I left and went to a regular comprehensive and got some qualifications behind me and everything. And my sister didn't. She carried on at theatre school and she went straight into work very early and was really successful. I've always wondered if perhaps I should have chosen the other option because it was a longer road for me, and I'm still very much on it. And I suppose that the next major decision, a final decision, was whether to have children or not, or take this huge job that was offered to me. And I chose my children in that case. So I'm very grateful. I've got 2 lovely boys, and I've still got my career, but I just kind of wonder what would have happened if.
Unit 9. Inspiration. Recording 1.
Unconventional. Thought-provoking. Bleak. Compelling. Charming. Well-received. Poignant. Overrated. Offbeat. Stylish. Striking. Subtle.
Unit 9. Recording 2. Speaker 1.
People always ask me that, and it's a very difficult question to answer. One thing is that it's no good just sitting around waiting for an idea to come. If I'm stuck for an idea, I have to switch off and do something else for a while. Doing the washing up is quite good, doing something mundane that you don't have to think too hard about. So I like to invite lots of people round to dinner so that in the morning there are lots of plates to wash, and that gets me thinking. When you free the mind, it helps spark creative connections. So you're doing the washing up or having a shower and suddenly an idea might come to you. You actually have to take your mind off the writing, off the task in hand, and that's when you think of something creative. It's funny how our brains work. Sometimes I'll go out into the garden or go for a run to clear my head. When I get back to my desk, the ideas flow a lot more easily.
Speaker 2.
Inspiration? Oh, goodness. Inspiration is everywhere, I guess. I'm inspired by people, the people around me, by people who achieve great things or manage terrible hardships. The world around us is full of stories and people doing things differently. And when you work in advertising, you're always looking for something new, a new way of conveying your message. Nature. Nature is another great inspiration. Going somewhere beautiful is a really good way to get new ideas. Or doing an outdoor sport. Sometimes I'll go skiing or snowboarding, and there's something about it, the fresh air and the outdoors. Perhaps it's the sky and the mountains. I don't know. But while I'm there, I'll have lots of ideas for things I can do when I get back to work.
Speaker 3.
Books mainly. Old recipe books, like Margaret Coster, a classic. I'll look through old recipes and then try to recreate the same idea, but with a modern, more contemporary twist. Yes, old tomes. Larousse is another one, with plenty of ideas. Or sometimes I'll go to the Michelin guides, you know, the restaurants with stars. They have books, so I look there too. Unfortunately, I rarely eat out myself, so I don't get ideas that way, but books are a great inspiration. And there's something about having big, heavy books in the kitchen that have been with you a long time. They inherit your character a little and hold in them so many memories of enjoyable meals.
Speaker 4.
This is going to sound a bit odd, but something that has really inspired me in life has been the people who didn't believe in me. You know, I wasn't the cleverest kid in school. In fact, I left school as soon as I could. But at school, there was this one teacher who I'd never really got on with, and he told me that I would never get anywhere, that I would never achieve anything really worthwhile. And I remember thinking, through the loathing, that I would prove him wrong. I felt this huge sense of determination, and I've carried that with me. You know, at times when things aren't going well and I'm not sure if I could make a success of something, I'll think about that. And it really inspires me to put in that extra bit of effort to prove to myself that he was wrong. For an entrepreneur, that determination to succeed is really important.
Unit 9. Recording 3. 1.
Some. Coming. Company.
2.
Took. Book. Looking. Good.
3.
On. Novel. Cottage.
4.
Coin. Toying.
5.
Actor. Original. Ridiculous.
6.
Shoot. 2. Whose. Who.
7.
Mouth. Out.
8.
Door. Brainstorm.
9.
Show. Going.
Unit 9. Recording 4. Speaker 1.
If there's one thing I cannot stand, it's getting off a tube train on the London Underground and lots of people on the platform try to get on the carriage before I have gotten off. Honestly, it drives me up the wall. Don't they understand that if I can't get off, then they can't get on, so they need to let me off? And I have in the past actually raised my voice at tourists.
Speaker 2.
The last time we went to Cornwall, we went to the lovely little town of Foy, and I discovered what I could describe for me as paradise. It's a tea room, which somebody could describe in a book, and it still wouldn't be as good as you actually experience when you go in. It's beautifully decorated. It's got those little cake plates piled up with the most beautiful, sumptuous cupcakes. And then in the back part, they've got a lovely Rayburn, and if you decided you wanted sardines on toast or scrambled egg or something, they'll just whip it up for you. Every single thing you could imagine in your dream menu was... I could have sat there for a week and worked my way through the menu. It was the most wonderful, delicious, and the surrounding, the people were so friendly, and they got to such a lot of trouble to make this gorgeous place to eat. And I'd definitely go back there again.
Speaker 3.
The other night I saw the best show ever. It was a show called Dirty Dancing. It's on in the West End. Absolutely fantastic. The acting was brilliant. The dancing was brilliant. The songs were terrific. I mean, uniformly, they were absolutely terrific. And I don't know who played the mother, but she was especially good. Honestly, really the best show ever. You must see it.
Speaker 4.
I cannot recommend highly enough a trip to one of the beautiful islands of Thailand. I went there last year, and there is absolutely nothing better than finding yourself on a private beach with a cool drink in hand and having a dip in tropical warm waters. And I saw one of the most spectacular sunsets I've ever seen. And honestly, I couldn't believe my luck when I saw turtles in the water. I've always wanted to see turtles. It was idyllic.
Speaker 5.
The worst meal I ever had was quite recently. It was absolutely horrendous. The restaurant was grossly overpriced. Honestly, it was a total waste of money, but it's also, minutes of my life that I won't get back. The service was appalling, and the waiter just seemed like he'd rather be doing anything else. Clearly, it's hard to cook for a lot of people. I understand that at the same time. But, meals were coming out at all different times. We had appetizers arriving and then the main course and then nothing for about an hour. It was horrendous.
Speaker 6.
I bought the one-touch can opener and it has changed my life. Seriously, and I'm not even overstating how amazing it is. It's an all-time classic of products. You have to get one. And I couldn't believe my luck when it arrived in the post just for me. And it does exactly what it says it will. You touch it once and you leave it alone. It's incredible. It's the most incredible thing. You don't have to. You can do something else if you want. It's one of the most spectacular, life-changing products you can buy because all of that mess and effort taken away. So if you're ever thinking about it, just do it. It's awesome. Seriously, the best product.
Unit 9. Recording 5. Raving.
It was the most wonderful experience.
It was absolutely incredible.
It's really the best show ever.
There's absolutely nothing better than being on a private beach.
It was one of the most spectacular sunsets I've ever seen.
I couldn't believe my luck when I saw turtles.
It was idyllic.
It's an all-time classic.
Ranting.
If there's one thing I can't stand, it's a crowded tube train.
It drives me up the wall.
It was absolutely horrendous.
It was a total waste of money.
It's not my kind of thing at all.
Unit 9. Recording 6. 1.
Honestly, it drives me up the wall.
2.
I have in the past actually raised my voice at tourists.
3.
I'd definitely go back there again.
4.
She was especially good, honestly.
5.
The restaurant was grossly overpriced.
6.
Clearly, it's hard to cook for a lot of people.
Unit 9. Recording 7.
OK, the person I want to nominate is not famous. He isn't a celebrity and has never been on TV. He's one of those people who goes under the radar because he's so humble. I'm nominating him because he's made a huge difference to people's lives. His name is Tommaso Beltrini, though everyone calls him Tom, and he's 63 years old. Tom is a factory worker, but in his spare time for the last 30 years, he's worked tirelessly with immigrants and refugees who are new to Australia and helped them with the language and with forms and documents. He helps them find apartments and jobs, and he provides moral support and sometimes even financial support. He's based in a small town near Perth, which has a high number of immigrants and refugees. So sometimes these are people who come to the country quite traumatised by their experiences back home. Maybe they're escaping war or persecution, and what they need is a new start in life and a friendly face and someone to pick them up and help them to integrate into society. Well, Tom's been doing that as a volunteer at our refugee centre for 3 decades. He's an example to us all. He must have helped thousands of people, and he's done it with incredible dignity and kindness. I don't think we'll ever know how much good he's done, but I know this: he'd be a worthy winner of this award because no one deserves it more.
Unit 10. Horizons. Recording 1. 1.
They set off on an epic journey.
2.
After 26 years on the road.
3.
A trial run of the trip in Africa.
4.
It was a valuable learning experience.
5.
Spend a couple of years touring the continent.
6.
After quitting his job.
7.
The couple headed straight for the Sahara Desert.
8.
Travelling off the beaten track.
10. Recording 2. 1.
My life would be considerably better if I had a normal job.
2.
Being a celebrity is nothing like as glamorous as it seems.
3.
One good thing about fame is that it's far easier to book a table in a restaurant.
4.
Even for a celebrity, it's every bit as difficult to enjoy life.
Unit 10. Recording 3. 1.
The more the merrier.
2.
The sooner the better.
3.
The bigger they come, the harder they fall.
Unit 10. Recording 4.
When I taught in New York City high schools for 30 years, no one but my students paid me a scrap of attention. In the world outside the school, I was invisible. Then I wrote a book about my childhood and became Mick of the Moment. I hoped the book would explain family history to McCourt children and grandchildren. I hoped it might sell a few hundred copies and I might be invited to have discussions with book clubs. Instead, it jumped on the bestseller list and was translated into 30 languages, and I was dazzled. The book was my second act. In the world of books, I'm a late bloomer, a Johnny-come-lately, new kid on the block. My first book, Angela's Ashes, was published in 1996 when I was 66. The second, Tis, in 1999 when I was 69. At that age, it's a wonder I was able to lift the pen at all. New friends of mine, recently acquired because of my ascension to the bestseller list, had published books in their 20s. Striplings. So, what took you so long? I was teaching, that's what took me so long. Not in college or university where you have all the time in the world for writing and other diversions, but in 4 different New York City public high schools. I've read novels about the lives of university professors where they seem to be so busy with adultery and academic infighting, you wonder where they found time to squeeze in a little teaching. When you teach 5 high school classes a day, 5 days a week, you're not inclined to go home to clear your head and fashion deathless prose. After a day of 5 classes, your head is filled with the clamour of the classroom. I never expected Angela's Ashes to attract any attention, but when I hit the bestseller list, I became a media darling. I had my picture taken hundreds of times. I was a geriatric novelty with an Irish accent. I was interviewed for dozens of publications. I met governors, mayors, actors. I met the first President Bush and his son, the governor of Texas. I met President Clinton and Hillary Rodham Clinton. I met Gregory Peck. I met the Pope and kissed his ring. Sarah, Duchess of York, interviewed me. She said I was her first Pulitzer Prize winner. I said she was my first Duchess. She said, "Ooh," and asked the cameraman, "Did you get that? Did you get that?" I was nominated for a Grammy for the spoken word and nearly met Elton John. People looked at me in a different way. They said, "Oh, you wrote that book. This way, please, Mr. McCourt," or "Is there anything you'd like?" Anything. A woman in a coffee shop squinted and said, "I seen you on TV. You must be important. Who are you? Could I have your autograph?" I was listened to. I was asked for my opinion on Ireland, conjunctivitis, drinking, teeth, education, religion, adolescent angst, William Butler Yeats, literature in general. What books are you reading this summer? What books have you read this year? Catholicism, writing, hunger. I spoke to gatherings of dentists, lawyers, ophthalmologists, and of course, teachers. I travel the world being Irish, being a teacher, an authority on misery of all kinds, a beacon of hope to senior citizens everywhere who always wanted to tell their stories. They made a movie of Angela's Ashes. No matter what you write in America, there is always talk of the movie. You could write the Manhattan telephone directory and they'd say, "So, when is the movie?"
Unit 10. Recording 5.
So, David, tell us a little more about negotiating. Is it all about the words you use?
Much of negotiating is in body language and gesture, but it's also vital that you use the right words.
OK, so I'm at the beginning of some kind of negotiation. How do I start? What's my opening gambit?
Well, the first thing you want to do is name your objectives.
OK.
So you can use a phrase such as, "We want to sort this out as soon as possible." This makes it clear what you want from the discussion. Another thing you need to do is explore positions.
What does that mean exactly? Can you give an example?
It means asking questions like, "Can you tell me more about this? What do you have in mind?" Exploring positions is all about asking what the other guy wants and then really listening.
I see. So we're trying to establish common goals.
Yeah, then you need to make an offer.
And this is where the real negotiating starts.
Exactly. And the if word becomes so important because your offer is going to be conditional on certain terms being met, concessions and compromises being made. So you might say, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. What if we gave you access to this? What if we supported your idea?
I see. So it seems in negotiating, the word if is the biggest word in the language.
That's right.
What about negotiating meaning? Things like checking that you understand the conditions on offer.
Essential. Negotiations can be long and tiring, but you cannot switch off for a moment. If you missed something, don't bluff. Ask about it. Go over the points more than once. Be sure. Ask, have I got this right? Are you saying this or that?
OK. And what about the end game? Let's say the haggling is over. It's decision time and you need to refuse or accept the deal.
Well, refusing is always delicate. You really don't want to close off all further discussion, so you need to be tactful. You never just say no. Instead, you give reasons and explanations. You might say, that's more than I can offer. That would be difficult for me because of my situation. I'm not sure I can do that because I promised something else.
In other words, you refuse without saying no.
Yeah. It's at this stage you might want to stall for time or defer the decision, or if you're in business, consult a more senior colleague. The next stage is when you've reached agreement. You say something like, good, that sounds acceptable to me, or great, we've got a deal. But that's not it.
It isn't over.
You need to follow up the deal. Be polite and civil. Say something like, we can talk about it again and review the situation in a few months. If it's a more formal deal, we can say, let me know if you have any queries. The thing is to follow up the deal. Always keep the conversation open.
Unit 10. Recording 6. 1,
I'd like to think about it.
2,
I'll have to ask about that.
3,
I need more time to consider it.
4,
I can give you an answer to that right now.
5,
Can I get back to you on that?
Unit 10. Recording 7.
I guess my dream job would have to be a filmmaker, making short films, well, making full-length films too. That would be wonderful. The kind of films I'm interested in are those realistic animation films. What appeals to me is that it's wonderfully creative. There's so much you can do. You can do anything. I'd relish having the opportunity to work in an environment like that. I'm fairly qualified in that, well, I'm doing a degree in time-based art and digital film at university, so we do a lot of work on film, image, sound and performance. I've made a series of short films using various different techniques, so I've got a bit of experience behind me, and I'd like to think I'm a fairly creative individual. I have lots of ideas about how to do things, and I'm not afraid to try out new ideas, to experiment. I'd say I've got quite a good eye for things that are going to work, like an instinct. I can sense if something is working or not visually, or if we need to change it. I think it's essential to be open-minded and forward-thinking. There are a lot of people now doing fantastically creative things and making films, so it's quite hard to be able to stand out from the crowd. So you need good business sense too, to make sure your film is successful. It's not just about having the ideas, you need to be a good organiser so you can manage a project. And you have to be flexible. As for moving towards getting my dream job, as I said, I'm still studying at the moment, but I try to do as much creative work as I can in my spare time. I'm also doing some work experience with an advertising company looking at how we can use short films in advertising. I'm hoping that this experience will help me to find a job when I graduate.